Good afternoon, good evening to you, my fellow cycle breakers, to family, to friends. Thank you so much for tuning in to my memories. I am going back through 66 years of my life, and as the Lord kind of drops in my spirit or reminds me of a particular memory, I am sharing those with you on today. And then there is a fire moment, all right? Because I told you earlier, fire in the right hands, the hand of God, it burns out what you don't need so that what you do need can grow. So we give God the praise today. I have a memory for today that was dropped in my heart. Oh gosh, early this morning. And so again, we're on day 20 of 27 days of fire, the road to 67. And today I want to talk to you about something that's real. All right. Something that's kind of subtle and something that many people kind of overlook, but it matters. It matters more than you think. So there was a season in our marriage when my children were young. My son was walking and my daughter was still an arm baby, right? And at this time in this season of my life, my husband and I both, and we still do, had a sincere drive for ministry. And my husband, being new in ministry, he wanted to really operate in his gift. So he took an assignment um, in another part of the state, almost 2 hours. It was almost a 2 hour drive, I would say. And when I say committed, I mean, this man would show up two, sometimes three times a week, driving back and forth, helping build that ministry. Now, at the same time, I was fully engaged at the headquarters church in Greensboro. And I was the pastor of outreach, administration, and counseling. So my hands were full, right? And I had a lot to do, and we were under the same umbrella, but I would stay in Greensboro and he would travel to this church, on Sundays and during the week. Um, but we were operating under the same umbrella, but in different locations. But anyway, this one day, when he would come home, I would always get his shirts and his laundry ready, wash clothes, but then get his shirts ready to go and his pants to go into the cleaners. So this one day, as I was preparing the laundry, I find this note, in his pocket. And it's from one of the women in that ministry thanking him for counseling him, for being a good friend and for helping her through a very difficult time with with her marriage. And I thought, that's really beautiful, that she would take the time to really thank him like that. That's the work of ministry, right? It was. And this lady, I had to add, she was really kind of, I wasn't worried. I mean, she was, kind of a plain woman. She her hair was natural and to the point that she would just pull it up in a little bun on top of her head. She always wore dark colors, dresses down to her ankles, kind of introverted, no makeup, no jewelry, nothing like that. So I wasn't worried, about it. And then the following week, I saw another note, right? And my husband, shared it with me. And then a few weeks later, there was a card and a note, right? So now I have to be clear here, and I just want to share that my husband has always been loyal, even to this day. He never gives me any reason to second guess him. I mean, he's a supporter, he backs me, he shows me compassion, love, everything. I mean, I have never, ever, ever had any reason to suspect him. So that was never the issue, and it wasn't the issue then. But there was something about these notes and cards I couldn't ignore. It wasn't what was written, but it's what I felt in my heart, right? It was between the lines, something that really wasn't being said, but it was there. Now, I didn't react to it, I just prayed. Seriously, I really prayed. So there came a time when my husband was being honored in that ministry, for the work that he had been doing. And I got permission from our pastor to go with him for that day. Now, mind you, I had my children. My son was walking, and my daughter was still an arm baby. So when we get there, he kind of walks ahead of me because he has to go in early, and I'm walking behind him a little distance, and just getting everything out the car, that I need for the baby. And as I'm walking up, behind him, about 5 or 6 paces behind, I hear voices greeting him. And then I hear her voice, "Good afternoon, Minister Pfeiffer. You look sharp today." And she really put emphasis on that sharp, and my everything in me just kind of went into, tuning in, right? And it was no biggie. It was still no biggie. But when I turned the corner with my kids, and she saw me and I saw her and I saw it right there on her face. She was shocked. This woman, this day, was dressed to the nines. She had her hair done. She had on makeup. I couldn't believe it. Beautiful earrings, a beautiful dress, smiling so big. But when she saw me, that smile dropped off her face. She started stumbling over her words. And she said, I didn't know you were coming today. And I said calmly, I would never miss an opportunity to honor my husband. And I did put a slight emphasis on my, right? But from that day forward, guess what? There were no more notes, no more cards. There was distance. When I would come, just to fellowship or whatever, there was distance, the proper distance. Boundaries were respected. There was a change there. What I felt was gone, right? And here's the fire in that moment. Now, I have to tell you, my husband didn't pick up on none of that. He didn't pick up on a bit of it, none at all, because his heart was so open for ministry and changing lives. He didn't have a clue. But here's the fire in that moment. And this is what the fire revealed. You have to protect what God has entrusted to you. Now, I'm not talking about having a guard dog mentality. I got to be there. I got to watch over. I got to, see who's touching. I got to see who's smiling. I got to see who's hugging too long. Nah. I have never been like that way. My husband can go away, and I don't even think about nothing like that, because he never gives me any reason to think like that. I can go away on a trip, ministry, whatever, and he never thinks like that. Why? Because I give him no reason to think like that. That's a good point right there. And some of you need to hear that one, right? But anyway, God has entrusted to you, the ability to not just to see things, but to have discernment. I mean, gut discernment from him, not just from obvious threats, but from subtle shifts. And this is any type of relationship, really, because everything that crosses a boundary doesn't come loudly. Some things come quietly, politely, and respectfully, but still need to be addressed. And hear me, women, you are receivers. We are receivers by nature, which means you can sense things, you can feel things, you can pick up on things that others just may overlook, including our husbands. And that's not insecurity. Again, that's discernment, not guard dog feelings, but I'm talking about the instincts that God gives you. All right. And men, you are protectors by nature. You carry responsibility, leadership, covering. But even in that, you have to be mindful of what you allow access to. All right. Because not every connection needs closeness. And not every assignment requires emotional access. And not every person should have personal space in your life. And that is so important, right? Because when boundaries are not clear, the lines will get blurred. And when lines get blurred, confusion enters, and sometimes a lot of confusion. And then when the confusion shows up, there's going to be vulnerability. And what you don't guard, you really do risk losing. I learned as a young wife to support my husband, to be present, to be sensitive, because if you don't tend to what God gave you, meaning tending, doing what you need to be doing, taking care of your home, taking care of your children, taking care of yourself, and taking care of him, there will always be someone willing to step in. So let me ask you today, where in your life do you need to strengthen your boundaries? And where have you allowed something that seems harmless, but deep down, you know it needs to be addressed? And where are you ignoring what you feel because you don't want to seem confrontational? So where are you trusting without guarding, loving without protecting, serving without covering your own house? Because hear me really clearly, God will give you discernment, but you have to act on it. Proverbs 4:23 says that we should keep our heart with all diligence, because out of it flow all the issues of life. We have to guard our hearts. We have to protect our hearts and be intentional about it. Not going off on jealous rages, not like I said, having that guard dog mentality, but really, really watching the issues that come out of our life, because sometimes the very innocent things that they do can run through the filter of jealousy or lack of trust or low self-esteem, and therefore you can interpret something that they're doing in a wrong way, and it puts you totally out of the will of God in your marriage. And that's why a lot of people end up in divorce court or end up not in the relationship anymore. But at the same time, sometimes God will put things in our heart so we can guard our relationships, so we can protect our relationships. Not that anyone's doing anything wrong, but so that we can help to set the proper boundaries that may be needed so none of those things jump off. Okay. So, and this is true even in relationships. Sometimes we can have friends that are too open with people, or too gossipy with people, or tell their business too much. And God puts us in our life to help guard that relationship, to help protect that friend, so that they're not so open to everything and everybody. So this can be applied to so many levels of relationships. It's really good. Even with ministry, I've learned that from that experience, that when I counsel someone of the opposite sex, I always leave my door to my office cracked. I never have it closed completely to where if someone walks by, they know that I am in consultation, but with someone of the opposite sex. And if that spouse, I make sure that that spouse, sees me talking to that person. I don't push them off in a corner, to have words. Anything. I mean, because these things cause suspicion, and they cause a lot of confusion where there doesn't need to be any confusion. So anyway, if this spoke to you, I want you to drop some fire in the comments, because the fire will reveal this too. What you protect with wisdom will be preserved with peace. All right. So anyway, I hope this blessed you. It was kind of different, but it was my memory, and I thought I would share it because it was definitely on my heart for whatever reason. This is day 20 of 27 days of fire, the road to 67. And I will see you tomorrow with day 21. And remember, protect what God gave you in the spirit of wisdom. God bless you, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye bye. No, actually, I will see you tonight at 6:30 for Cycle Breaking Monday. So go get you some coffee, get you something to drink, and come back in 15 minutes. All right. God bless you all. Have a good evening. Bye bye.